Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, which is the last of 3 videos on percent of change, we're going to look at more complicated examples involving percent of change. So taking a look at this first example, it says the first known motion picture was filmed in 1888 and lasted for only 2 and 1100 seconds. Today we watch movies that last an average of about 2 hours. What is the percent of change in the times from 1888 to today? Round your answer to the nearest whole percent if necessary. So the complicated piece with this problem is that if I'm taking a look at the question, I'm looking at the times, the first motion picture was 2.11 seconds, 2 and 1100 seconds long, super short. Then they're saying, well, today on average, they're about 2 hours. So our time changed, or I should say, our units changed. Obviously the time changed, right? That's a big difference. But our units are not the same. So we want to make sure we convert this to be in seconds as well. Otherwise, we're not going to accurately calculate our percent of change. So we're going to take our 2 hours and convert this into seconds. And I'm just going to quickly do some dimensional analysis, which is a really good strategy for converting our units. And so I'm going to change hours to seconds by saying, well, there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, and then we have one more conversion, which is the fact that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. And then we're going to essentially our labels would cancel, and then we're left with just seconds, which is perfect because that's exactly what we want to change our time into. And so 2 times 60 times 60 is going to be 7,200. So you get 7,200 seconds. So now that I have my 2 hours in the form of seconds, we can go ahead and find the change, right? Because remember, when I am doing my percent of change, it's the percent over 100 equals the change over the original. So we have to find the change in these two values. So we're going to be doing 7,200 minus the 2 and 1100 seconds. So 7,200 minus 2 and 1100 seconds is going to be 7,197 and the 900ths. So now that I have that figured out, I can plug that into my proportion. So we're trying to find the percent change. That's out of 100. The change was 7,197 and 8,900 seconds. So pretty big change there. And my original, so where we started, was only 2 and 1100 seconds. So at this point, we're going to do our cross products. So that means we're going to do P times that 2 and 1100ths. We'll do 100 times the 7,197 and 8,900ths. So multiplying across the diagonal there, we would end up with 2 and 1100ths P equals 719,789, so 719,789 when we do that multiplication with the 100. And then we have one more step, which is to divide. So we're going to divide both sides by that 2 and 1100ths. And we're going to find that P is equal to 341,132 and some change, but it does say to round to the nearest whole percent. So the 0.227 at the end of our answer that you'll see on a calculator, we're just going to use that to help us with the rounding. Since it's 0.2, that means we're going to stay at 132 at the end of our number. And so yeah, this is approximately 341,132% of an increase because we increased the amount of time. So it is a huge increase from where motion pictures are at in 1888 versus today. All right, so our last example, we're looking at a track and field question. So the track and field coach recorded Ian's 400-meter race times during several practices. How much greater was the percentage change from practice 1 to practice 2 than from practice 2 to practice 3, rounded to the nearest 10th? So in this question, we're going to actually have to calculate a couple percent of change problems, right? Proportions, we're going to set those up so that we can then find the difference between those 2% of changes. So we'll start off by, again, it says from practice 1 to practice 2. So we're going to take a look at these 2 times first. So again, with our percent of change, we're going to be taking a look at, let's see, practice 1 to practice 2. So I'm just going to label it practice 1 to 2. And we're going to set up again our percent proportion. So P over 100 equals, and then our difference. So from practice 1 to practice 2, so we're going in that order, we went from 63 to 60, so that is a decrease. And so that is a decrease, a change of 3. And my original value, again, where you started at practice 1, we were at 63. So now that I have my proportion set up, again, P over 100 equals 3 over 63. Again, this 3 is just the difference between 63 and 60. So I'll show my work on the side there. And then we can go ahead and do our cross products. So we're going to do P times 63, then 3 times 100. So 63P equals 300. And dividing this, we're not going to end up with a nice answer, but it does say to round to the nearest tenth. So we'll go ahead and do that in this question. So divide by 63. And we find that our percent is approximately 4 8/8%. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, but between practice 2 and practice 3. So I'm going to go ahead and label my work here. So practice 2 to 3, and we're going to find that percent of change. So I'm going to set up a very similar proportion. So P over 100 equals, and then we're going to find, again, the difference between these two times now. Well, 60 minus 58, that is a change of 2 seconds. And then we're going to have our original value on the bottom of this, and we started with, again, practice 2 to practice 3. So the original from practice 2 to practice 3 is that 60. Then we're going to go ahead and do our cross products now that we have our proportion set up. So we're going to do P times 60, 100 times 2. We're going to have 60P equals 200, and then 200 divided by 60, because we do have to divide both sides by 60, since that P is being multiplied by 60. The inverse tells us we have to divide, and we're going to find that our percentage is approximately 0.3% if we just round to the nearest tenth like the problem asked us. So we're not done here, because the final question we're trying to answer is how much greater the percent of change was than the practice 2 to practice 3, right? So how much greater of a percent of change was this? Well, we just have to do one more step, which is to subtract. So our final answer we're going to get from doing 4.8 minus the 3.3, and we're going to find that it's 1.5% approximately greater. So that's how much greater the percent change was from practice 1 to practice 2 than from practice 2 to practice 3. So that's it for this video. Hopefully that helps you with some of those more complicated percent of change questions. Thanks for watching.